You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to hear more of the
Okay,
story.
listen. So it's 1992, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 8 years old, and my dad's like, "Oh, catch is closing." What are you doing? Are you taking a picture of me?
Yeah, I'm taping you.
Anyway, so it was 19. This is like drunk history, by the way. Okay, it's 1992, and Catch was closing, so it was a really big deal, and like all the celebrities who started there like showed up, and so I walk in and I remember, I was young or whatever, but I was about 8 years old, and I remember seeing Jon Stewart and my dad being like, "Oh yeah, this is my son Sean," and being like, "Oh okay, hey, how you doing?" And about 2-3 years later, that's when he became like insanely famous, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's Jon Stewart!" Like I met the guy, it's like, and he was like a cool guy, like, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" And then my dad's like, "Oh, so Jerry Seinfeld's gonna be here." And I didn't know who the fuck he was, because that was like right when Jerry Seinfeld, the show became really famous. So then it was a big deal, like everybody was talking about it, so I knew it was a big deal. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm friends with him, I'm going to introduce you." So I'm like, "Oh shit, cool." And my dad's like, "Yeah, and he's with like a 17-year-old girl." Like, he must have really trusted me to say some shit like that, like when I was 8,
What the fuck?
So then he comes in and it's like a huge deal, and I'm like, okay, like this guy's pretty famous. So then he comes over to me, and my dad goes, and I knew that they were friends because it wasn't like, "Oh hey, how you doing? Like I remember you." He was like, I forget what he said, but he said some kind of joke. He's like, "No, no, no, no," to my dad, and my dad was like, "Hey," and he was like, "Oh Jerry, this is my son Sean." And the one thing that I remember specifically from that was that Jerry Seinfeld had the most girly, weak handshake I've ever fucking. Because I remember, at that age I used to like shake hands with people, and I realized, I guess this is probably a New York thing, but I realized early that like a firm handshake was like a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
and like I even learned as like a young kid that like if you shake someone's hand, the proper way to do it is to shake it and then like put your left hand or right hand over it. That's like classy as fuck, right? So like I do, and I was like, why is this guy's hand so like girly and limpy, like how he is on the show? Like he's all like, so he's just like a soft dude. He's a cool guy though. And then so I met him, and I remember seeing the girl, and I was like scoping her around. I was just like, who's it? So she's 17, huh? And when you're 8, like 17 looks like 30.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, whatever. But she was pretty, and she looked like someone he would date. She kind of looked, I don't know, she looked like a Jewish chick from New York, whatever. She's following him around. And then he did a set, and he killed it, and someone tried to like heckle him, and he came out with like the illest comeback. I can't remember, but he just like shut that dude down. And then he fucking left, and I remember, I remember meeting Jon Stewart. I remember Seinfeld, obviously. I met David Brenner. Do you know David Brenner from Law and Order?
No.
David Brenner. There was a comedian who I had a crush on. Like her name was Linda Smith, and I remember like having a huge crush on her, and she knew it. And she used to like humor me. And then I saw her act when I was older, and she's like dirty, like Lisa Lampen. And I was like, holy shit, that's so funny. Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to be like a romantic. I was the only kid to like ask chicks out, you know what I mean, when I was like really young. But yeah. That's my cat story. Yeah.
Any Larry David stories?
Yeah, I have some good stories about what? What do you want to hear?
Tell me what you know.
You want to hear about the time I met Aaliyah?
You told me that.
I told you that. I met Paul Simon.
That's cool.
Paul Simon was at SIR Studios, and he was producing or directing some show, and my dad was there, and he was like, "Oh, you should come down, like Paul Simon's here." I was like 13, 14. So I come down, and I was just like, I did it just because he said he was famous, just like whatever, but I didn't know how big a deal it was. So I got down there, and Paul Simon's really frustrated, in like a bad mood. So I just walk in, and I'm like, I knew it was a cool thing because I knew he was famous, but I didn't know, like, Simon and Garfunkel and all that shit. So I go in, and he's like rubbing his head, and he turns around, he looks at me, and he goes, "Hey kid, you know how to dance?" And I laughed. I was like, "Oh," my dad told me like, "Oh, he's been seeing like a lot of terrible singers and dancers all day." So he was just making a joke. He's like looking back at me. He's like, "Hey, like I'll take anybody." Like If it was now, I would have ran up in there and started doing some moves, you know? Yeah. That was cool. And I told you the whole Oprah story.
Yeah.
That's a long story.
That's cool.
I met Sally Jesse Raphael.
Oh, yeah, you told me
She's really
that
nice.
too.
She was a very nice lady.
Mm.
Yeah. That's probably the worst video you've ever recorded. Is it still recording?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, I'm done. I'll turn it off.